prominent professor at Proclamation News and Gatherance. It's the prodigious, the prominent professor at Proclamation News and Gatherance, and we're working on progressive progression inside UK politics today. Who have we got in our formation? How I'd like to tackle my journalism. Thank you and welcome for tuning in. Yesterday we had some interesting subjects on relationship advice, like the love guru almost. Thank you for the love. George George Floyd. They've always going about George Floyd in the media just recently. You probably heard about the LBC radio. You probably heard it on BBC radio. All over the media at the minute. George Floyd, officer told dying man to stop yelling. The officer was beating up George Floyd to death and he died. I don't know if any of you heard that. The US police officer accused of George Floyd murder told him to stop talking as he repeatedly gasped under the man's knee. According to court documents, the unarmed black man cried out for his late mother and children as he said the Minneapolis policeman who killed him. The transcripts from body cam footage show they were disclosed in court by lawyers for one of the four officers involved. The document offered the clearest picture yet of Mr. Floyd's last moments. His death in May sparked global uproar. It led to a wave of anti-racism protest, led to Black Lives Matter movement, and stirred debate and reflection in the US over the country's history of slavery and segregation. All four officers involved in taking Mr. Floyd into custody were fired and arrested. Derwin Chauvin, who knelt on his neck, faces several charges including second-degree murder, while the other three, Thomas Lane, J. Alexander Kuang, and Tol Fayou, are charged with aiding and abetting murder. The transcripts were made in public on Thursday as Miss Lane's lawyers asked for the case against him to be dismissed. What do transcripts show? Until now, eyewitnesses' footage shared on social media revealed most of what was known about Mr. Floyd's arrest and his final moments. The new transcripts give a more detailed account, shielding light on significant parts of the encounter from the time Mr. Lane and Mr. Kuang arrived at the scene. The point where Mr. Floyd was given a CPR in an ambulance. Transcripts of footage recorded by body cameras fitted by Mr. Lane and Mr. Kuang show Mr. Floyd said more than 20 times he could not breathe as he was restrained by officers in a Minneapolis street on the road next to the police car. He gasped that he could not breathe, adding, "You're not going to kill me, man." Mr. Chauvin, who is shown as a bystander footage appearing to kneel on Mr. Floyd's neck for nearly 8 minutes, replies, "Then stop talking, stop yelling. It takes a hell of a lot of oxygen to talk." The transcripts show Mr. Floyd appears cooperative at the beginning of the arrest, repeatedly apologising to the officers at their approach his parked car. Mr. Lane asked Mr. Floyd to show his hands at least 10 times before ordering him to get out of the vehicle. In response to the demands to see his hand, Mr. Floyd says, "Man, I got shot the same way." Mr. Officer before, it's not clear what he was referring to. At one point, Mr. Lane says, "Why he's getting all squirrely and not showing us his hands and being all weird like that." The officer then handcuffs Mr. Floyd and tries to put him into the back of the police car. As they do, Mr. Floyd becomes agitated, repeatedly pleading that he is claustrophobic. Mr. Lane asks if he's on something. Mr. Floyd replies, "I'm scared, man." According to another document, Mr. Lane told investigators that once in the car, Mr. Floyd began thrashing back and forth. Officers then pulled him out of the car and to the ground. Pinned on the floor, according to the transcript, Mr. Floyd cries out a dozen times, "Mama." He says, "Can't believe this, man. Mum, love you, love you. Tell my kids I love him, I'm dead." At one point, when Mr. Floyd continues to plead he can't breathe, Mr. Lane asks Chauvin, "Should we roll him on the side?" The officer responds, "No, he's staying put where we got him." Mr. Chauvin lawyers have not commented on the document since they were made public. Absolutely horrific, isn't it? Horrific in the US, the police, the way they manhandle this man to the ground. Why are the transcripts coming out now? The transcripts were released in support of legal bid to dismiss the criminal charges against Mr. Lane. A new recruit only days into the job when Mr. Floyd's death happened. Mr. Lane's lawyer, Earl Grey, who filed the documents, argued that it was not fair and reasonable for his client to stand trial into the charges. The new court documents include a transcript of Mr. Lane's interview with investigators from Minnesota's Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. In the interview, Mr. Lane talked through the first crucial moments of this encounter with Mr. Floyd. Mr. Lane said he pulled his gun out in the order of Mr. Floyd to show his hands after approaching his car and seeing him with his hands down below the seat. Pictures from inside Mr. Floyd's car were sitting in before his arrest showed two crumpled $20 bills that, according to Mr. Gray, were counterfeit. Does that mean he deserves to be, a homicide, absolutely fatal death by the police officer from the US? Absolutely ironic, shocking. At the end of the interview, one of the investigators asked Mr. Lane if he felt either he or Mr. Chauvin had contributed to Mr. Floyd's death. I object to that. You're not going to answer that, Mr. Gray said. What has happened since Mr. Floyd's death, the incident and the bystander videos that exposed and highlighted deep wounds over racial inequality in the US? For many, the outrage over Mr. Floyd's death also reflected years of frustration over social and economic inequality and discrimination. Protests erupted and have continued since. Across many US cities and also internationally, police forces, governments and businesses pledged reforms in recognition in the racial inequality that fueled the protest. Monuments of historical figures with the links to slavery in the US and other countries were reassessed. Some were toppled and or vandalized. Others were taken down by authorities and institutions. Mr. Floyd's death followed the high-profile cases of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Mississippi, Eric Garner in New York, and others that have driven the Black Lives Matter movement in recent years. Black lives do matter, big time, and we should be supporting that across the globe. People having a joke saying white lives matter as well. That's selfish, narcissistic. I mean, come on. It's multiculturalism matters, and this is a death, and they're paying their tribute to George Floyd's death. The Black Lives Matter, and we're getting behind it. We're going to support it. We're going to move forward. Proclamation, news, and gatherings. It's becoming absolute populism. People are taking on board, sharing, subscribing, also abbreviating the multiculturalism and the ethos that is involved behind the scenes. Welcoming all ethnicity groups to our cast. Doesn't matter if you're Muslim, it doesn't matter if you're Jewish, it doesn't matter if you're Buddhism, it doesn't matter if you're Catholic, it doesn't matter if you're Christian. We all share the same blood. Here we go. Coronavirus, the animals abandoned during lockdown. The RSPCA has voiced fears that there will be a surge in abandoned animals in the wake of coronavirus crisis. Penny and Storm were rescued by the RSPCA Millbrook Animal Centre in Woking during lockdown. BBC Breakfast went to meet them and got these tips for people who are struggling. Aviation and gyms ignored by the government. UK airlines have said they are being ignored by the government and not being included in a fresh wave of economic stimulus to account for the effects of coronavirus. Industry body Airlines UK warned of further job losses and tens of thousands of job cuts. Gyms also say they are ignored and retailers called for tax breaks. The government had earlier said it had put in place one of the most comprehensive economic responses in the world. Plain dilemma. The UK aviation sector repeatedly called for more aid for the government as it grapples with the plunge in travel caused by the coronavirus pandemic. Demand is not expected to pick up to its previous level for 3 years, but airlines still face costs such as leasing aircraft that they have to pay. The Fresh set out the measures Chancellor Rishi Sunak announced on Wednesday to help people economy include dinners getting 50% of their restaurant bills during Mondays, Tuesdays and Wednesdays in August to stimulate the hospitality sector and a reduction in stamp duty to aid the house sector. However, Airlines UK reacted angrily to the plan, saying its members have been out. Tens of thousands of jobs lost in aviation and winter season were likely to see connectivity slashed, a spokesperson said. Now the Prime Minister has said the furlough scheme will end in October, saying nothing needs to give in the government continues to ignore aviation, where we can see our regional airports with fewer connections and more jobs lost across the aviation and the aerospace. Retail woes. The expectation that the government furlough scheme will end in October in part helped to drive the timing of thousands of job cuts last week. Many have fell in the retail sector. Retail industry say it had hoped for an aid like the tax break Mr. Sunak announced on Wednesday for the hospitality sector. The government lowered VAT on hospitality and tourism to 5%. The reduction, the 20%, will be in place for the next 6 months. It was disappointing that the Chancellor did not extend the measure into retail industry by 3 million people employees. The British Rail Consortium said it was missed opportunity and we hope that the government will consider this ahead of the autumn budget. However, the BRC is welcomed the Chancellor's huge support for employment and training, which included job retention bonus, £1,000 per furlough employed, still employed at the end of January. No tonic for gyms. Although business such as pubs have been allowed to reopen, other firms such as gyms have not opened. Pure Gym employs just over 1.5 thousand workers across 265 sites, as well as providing work for 3,500 self-employed personal trainers. Humphrey Cobbold, the chief executive of Pure Gym, said that the gym and fitness sector has been forgotten and ignored. I hope you're enjoying today's populism class of proclamation, news and gatherings. Subscribe, share, let your friend know. It's all well about opening pubs and restaurants and now subsidising their trade with massive VAT discounts, unlimited meal vouchers. But to be honest, it beggars belief that thousands of hard-working gyms and fitness operators are being left high and dry with no specific support. And let's remember, unlike pubs and restaurants, many of whom have been able to earn a revenue from the sales and takeaways, gym and fitness operators have led zero revenue for 110 days. Stand by your workers. Early Chancellor Rishi Sunak suspended to a question in the House of Commons, saying that he hoped that the government could make progress in reopening gyms and that airlines and aviation are experiencing a difficult period. I retain in close contact with the industry. Many individual companies understand what is happening and that there are things that we can and should do. Of course we will, he said. Later in a speech laying out the latest government stimulus plans, he said, while he's protecting every job, one of the most important things we can do to prevent unemployment is to get many jobs as possible, from furlough to back to their jobs. He then laid out details of jobs retention bonus, saying our message to this business is clear. If you stand by your workers, we'll stand by you. So Rishi Sunak is giving a great detailed whereabouts what is going on in the UK politics today.